Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now. I'm your host, Greg Matusky, the podcast where we speak about all things related to AI and human communications. I'm also the CEO and founder of Gregory FCA, which is a public relations firm with offices in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and London. And we do quite a bit of strategic financial communications. So today's guest is exceedingly appropriate for both our love of AI here within the four walls of Gregory FCA and all it's done to transform our business, as well as a sector of financial services called Registered Investment Advisors, RIAs, and wealth managers. Our guest is the founder of Artificial Intelligence Risk. His name is Alec Crawford, who came to this in a kind of circuitous manner. Alec, I'm really interested in your story. How did you get to AI? I understand you were an ESG investor, if I'm correct, and now after 1 year, you're in a startup AI company. How did we get to this point?
Yeah, so it's funny because this is really squares the circle for me. So going back to the 1980s, I was an undergraduate computer science at Harvard, and I wrote my senior thesis on large language models, or actually back then what we would call neural networks, and expert systems. It's basically teaching computers how to play poker and bet and bluff and things like that. And by the early 90s, we had realized that computers just didn't have enough power to really do that. And we went to this so-called AI winter. So I went full bore into finance. I worked at places like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs. And my most recent role in finance was as a partner at Lord Abbett, where we managed at the time about $250 billion. I was running risk management, was doing some stuff in AI, was doing some stuff in compliance. And I retired from there at the end of 22. I'm still a limited partner there. Love the place. It's awesome. And Greg, I played over 100 rounds of golf last year. And
that was real retirement.
Yeah, that was legit, right? And then I'm watching all these big companies onboard AI with no guardrails and just said, this is crazy, right? Like you got to have governance and risk management and, regulatory compliance and cybersecurity around AI, or really bad things are going to happen, not just for those companies, but for people and individuals. So that was kind of my, my lightning bolt. I started this company really last spring, incorporated in July, brought on my chief technology officer and co-founder, Frank Fitzgerald, almost immediately. And he's an incredible technologist. He was the CTO for O'Shaughnessy Asset Management. So that's Jim and Patrick O'Shaughnessy. Obviously, they've got their podcast, Invest Like the Best, which is an amazing podcast as well. And because we're so tied into the financial world, and because there's kind of, regulations coming down the pike, not just for the big banks, but for RIAs, we thought, hey, we need to help people out here, right? We don't want them, getting in trouble or leaking customer data or doing other things. But we also want to show them, hey, how can you use AI to help you in your job and kind of turbocharge your productivity? So that was
let's
really
return. Let's return to a point, because I didn't realize that you were involved for so long, because this comes up on our podcast all the time about the ebbs and flows of AI before the December 22 famous transition where ChatGPT was introduced to the world, which brought consumers into this and great awareness on the parts. What had to align in the universe, do you think, Alec, that this was ready at that time? Because, for instance, we had a robotics AI expert on a couple weeks ago who has been working on this at Carnegie Mellon AI since the 80s also. But what were the triggers that made it right for the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. What I'd say is really it was even ready before then. I think that it's conceivable that even before 2020, this could have happened. We could have had our AI moment then. The technology was there. The papers had been written. The computers were powerful enough. People were starting to spend money on it, or companies rather. And the inflection point was really because the public got fascinated with ChatGPT, right? They just started using it and said it was super easy to use, no coding required, could literally type in a question, get an answer, to the point where it really seemed like there was, intelligence on the other side, right? And I use the word "seemed like" very carefully because this is still what we call. So if you go to DARPA, and they have their three phases of AI, right? They've got logical, right? Which is what a lot of people were doing back in the 90s. That's like expert systems and, rule-based AI, right? And then you've got what we have now, which is called statistical, right? So you've got these graph databases and they try to predict the next best word, which is what large language models are really all about. And then in the future, we have cognitive, which is, machines that really are thinking, right? So we have statistical AI now masking as cognitive. A lot of people look at that, oh, this must be thinking or analyzing. It's not. All it's doing is predicting the next best word.
Well, let me ask you something because I'll give you my experience. The first time you saw ChatGPT, as somebody who understood AI, what were your thoughts?
I mean, I thought it was an amazing achievement, and there are plenty of people in AI that look at the technology behind it and go, wow, this is doing so much more than one would expect.
What is it doing? What more is it doing that one would not expect? I'm a generative AI. Remember, I'm a writer by trade, a content generator. And I agree. There's a lot more going on there when you see it come out. It can project the world, the ontology of certain sectors, right? How does it do that? Because I never thought that a machine would do that. I thought maybe, like you see in Word or something where it gives you a few lines. But what's happening behind it, do you think, Alec?
Well, there's a couple things. One is just the models are so big now and are getting trained with so much data that literally not even the developers really know what's going on behind the scenes, right? Kind of like we can understand how neurons work, right? And we understand how parts of the brain work. But if you ask someone to explain consciousness to you, like most of the time they can't figure it out. And it's probably something to do with quantum entanglement, right? So good luck figuring that out this year, although I'm sure we will figure that out at some point. But also the technologists have gotten smarter in terms of like, how do we use the technology? So a great example, and this is not a secret, although it's also not widely known, the latest models from OpenAI, it's not just one large language model, you're asking a question, getting an answer. What's really happening is there's a whole bunch of models under there answering the question, and then a meta model on top that's saying, I think this is the best answer, giving that to the user. So think about that. Like there's a lot of power behind that. That would be kind of like asking your board of directors as a CEO, like all 12 of them, hey, answer this question for me. And then going, hey, I think that's the best answer, right? And picking that one. So pretty amazing.
It is amazing. And, the first time I saw it, all my life, Alec, I had tried to train other people how to write. And that was one of the greatest frustrations of my life because it's just not something you can learn in a seminar, right? You can't learn to ride a bike in a seminar. You can't really learn to write thoughtfully in a seminar. And then when I saw it, first of all, I was like, is this a parlor trick? Is this really happening? Is it something that's real obvious and it's just trying to please me and it seems to be aware? But then, when I really got into it, I realized, no, this is a fundamentally different kind of technology. It's not software. It can really help me with, especially my junior associates, become competent writers because it's separated out all the data, the syntax and whatever from the thought, right? So we train people, concentrate on the thought. Where do you want to take it? What is the message? Don't worry about Oxford commas anymore or syntax so much, right? And that seems to be very productive, right? And it was a joyous occasion when I learned that I could finally get this tool. That's what really embraced me, right? And the things you're talking about really interest me, is what's behind these models and how do they work and neural networks. So I'm fascinated to hear you took that and you go into risk and compliance and targeting wealth management and RIAs. So where did that happen? And tell me about that jump.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, it's like, if you think about it, it's a combination of like the two things I've done in my career, right? A lot of technology and AI stuff, and then the risk management part, right? It's like all of a sudden is, like the I should have had a V8 moment, right? Because, I realized after playing 100 rounds of golf last year, and my wife is not a big fan of Florida, that, oh my God, I can't play golf during the winter. What am I going to do, right? so that was part of it. A little bit of a joke there, but also just a passion for AI. And look, there's two paths that AI could take over the next 10 years, right? And these are extreme and neither one will happen, right? One path is AI puts a whole ton of people out of jobs. It's used inappropriately, like, bad things happen to the economy, to the world, to trust in democracy, things like that. All right, that's one potential really bad path. The other good path is we control AI. We use AI appropriately. Everybody gets their specialized co-pilot for their job. All your drudge work is gone. You get to do the really cool stuff you love about your job, as opposed to, let's say, reconciling, financial statements at 2:00 in the morning before you need to, file them with the SEC or something like that. Have the computer do that. Have the AI do that, right? And I want to be part of the second version, right, where we could use AI safely and people are super excited, and we don't, and we have 3% unemployment, not 30% unemployment. That's the path I want to see. So that's what drives me.
And it's interesting. I'm aligned with you on that. I mean, here inside my firm, I call it the coalition of the willing. And those are individuals who want to learn how to master this. And it's funny because I get a lot of resistance from my compatriots in the industry. For years, they've gained certain status. They don't want to give it up. And there is some ego involved here about giving it up to a machine, because a machine can do some of this stuff better than people who've been trained for 30 years on it. However, the coalition of the willing are people that are going to come to the forefront and really master it so they can see the risks. Even if they don't accept it, at least we have to know what it will do in the future. What are its opportunities, what are its limitations, and what are its risks? And so in the world you're working in with RIAs, what problem did you see with regard to AI and how it could solve it?
Oh, yeah. So look, it starts with confidentiality of client data, right? So I'd go to RIA conferences and hear someone on stage saying, hey, I just put my client data into Chat GPT. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's like huge violation of confidentiality. Not only that, but you can end up with a situation because, Chat GPT uses your data to train the next version of the model. Let's say I put in there, Greg Matuski's home address is this and his account number is that and all this other, personal information. 6 months later, I could come back and say, hey, what's Greg Matuski's, home address and social security number? And it's got it, right? Like that's a disaster, right? So our goal is to educate RAs around that and then to provide them with ways to use software like ChatGPT, but safely, where all this information is safeguarded or encrypted or really whatever we need to do to allow RAs to do their job, but without worrying that their data is going to leak or they're going to reveal confidential information or God forbid, get in trouble with the regulators, because there are now a lot of existing cybersecurity rules, obviously for RIAs and other financial advisors, but more coming down the pike too. So you've got two rules being finalized probably this year by the SEC. One is the investment manager cybersecurity rule, and the other one is the predictive analytics rule, which is focused on AI.
Can you go into what those will do?
Sure.
Both of those?
Absolutely. So the first one's a little easier. The investment manager cybersecurity rule is requiring investment managers and RAs to put into place policies and procedures around cybersecurity with a focus on protecting customer information. So as you're aware, some RAs have been hacked and their customer data, makes it onto the dark web or is encrypted or whatever, terrible event. It's unusual, but it does happen. So the SEC is basically putting all these RIAs and investment managers on notice. You need a plan and you need to protect this data. And it's super important. And if you don't, you're in trouble, right? So that's the first rule. The second rule is the SEC predictive analytics rule, where basically what they're saying is, look, we're concerned about use of AI that may advantage your company and disadvantage your customer. One example of that is around things like robo-advisors is a good example, right? So
right.
If your robo-advisor selects all high-fee funds for your client, well, that's a problem, right? Now, if Greg, if you were a financial advisor and did that, the regulator would come in, look at the funds you would select and say, Greg, this is crazy. You selected all these high fee funds for your client. You're in trouble, right? Clearly you breached your fiduciary duty. Well, what if you're the advisor, but the AI picked the funds? Whose fault is that now, right? Is it the AI's fault? The SEC basically is saying, look, we need responsible people for this. You need to test your AI and make sure it's not going to make mistakes like this and create conflicts of interest. You can't use AI as an excuse. That's one really important piece of that rule, but it spreads out into customer communications, right? So if you're using AI to draft emails to your clients or create text messages or whatever, there's all kinds of rules around, oversight and what AI is allowed to do and not. And, think about this as the tracking that needs to happen now for things like, text messages and emails and things like that. Well, you're going to need to do the same thing with your large language models or ChatGPT. You need to keep track of everything and be able to produce it for regulators. I mean, look at these huge fines that companies have gotten around, automated text messages, that were unsupervised and things like that. You don't want to be making that mistake.
So let's go back to your solution for security, cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. I would say to you, I'll be the devil's advocate. I'll say, well, I'm using ChatGPT 4.0. It's specifically locked down for being used, your prompt being used for future training, and it's as secure as the Google Cloud might be secure. Talk a little bit about that, the necessity for a higher level.
Yeah, so if you're just going on the web, your agreement with OpenAI is that they can use your data to train, right? If you're getting something for free or for $20, you're the product, right? So there's two things going on there. One is if they get hacked, guess what? Your data's out in the wild, right? If they are allowed to train on it. But beyond that, there's just confidentiality with your client. Would you type your client's social security number and their portfolio information into, a Google search? Well, I wouldn't do that, right? And I also wouldn't do it on ChatGPT on the web. So what do you need to do? So basically what you need to do to get the highest level of security is deploy AI to your private cloud. And that's what we facilitate. So let's say you have an Azure private cloud, you can spin up an OpenAI instance in there. And then what our software does is the governance, risk management, compliance, and cybersecurity around that. So by governance, I mean, what data does the AI get to see? What documents does it get to see? And who at your company gets to use what AI agents for what use cases? So obviously a financial advisor can see their own portfolios and their own emails to their clients and gets access to, let's say, some financial planning documents. but the person on the other side of the floor who's doing the finance for the company and sees the books and records of the firm and the balance sheet, like those are two different people that need access to two different sets of AI agents, right? Because you may not want your individual financial advisor to know how much money overall the company is making, for example, what your balance sheet looks like. So that's governance. So by risk management, I mean controlling confidential information and personally identifiable information. You may not even want it going to the AI. So for example, we can detect and block or redact personal information before it goes to the AI or other confidential information. By compliance, I mean this permanent record of all chats with the chatbot, what's the version of the model, what data was used, who used it. So if a regulator comes in and says, hey, I want to see all of Greg's chats with the chatbot or requests about IBM, you can produce it just the way you could do that if you were sending emails or Bloomberg messages or text messages. And then finally, cybersecurity, where we have dedicated cybersecurity. So if someone's trying to hack your AI, jailbreak your AI, or do other types of attacks to exfiltrate data, it will flag it and notify the technology team so they can lock it down before anything really bad happens. And that's super important because why do companies encrypt their databases? So if a hacker gets in there, they can't really take anything, right? They can't get access to the database. They need to access it some other way. But large language models can't be encrypted like that, right? If a hacker gets in there and says, hey, tell me your top 1,000 clients and their addresses and social security numbers and how much money they have, you got a problem, right? Because it's going to tell them. So you want to be able to flag things like jailbreaking attempts or data exfiltration attempts in your system. And look, if you're a 1 or 2 person RIA, this is obviously a pretty low risk event, but there are RIAs out there with thousands of people. Like eventually someone's getting hacked, right? And you need to be able to keep an eye on what the large language models are doing and what their users are doing.
And let's go on to another topic, which you mentioned briefly, and that's agents, autonomous agents, I guess. And, this was 3 or 4 months ago, this was a hot topic everywhere for about a week. And I thought, man, this is what the future holds. And then I'm listening to a podcast with Mark Andreessen, and he's talking about autonomous agents. He just happens to mention financial services. He goes, the real silver bullet would be an autonomous agent, which would optimize your portfolio every minute of every day, right? So be able to, do tax loss harvesting, everything in real time, be able to make trades or whatever you'd want it to do, right? Now, I read your news release, and I really want to hear about this because I don't think many levels of the ecosystem in RIAs, wealth management firms, understand the agent issue. I mean, it was brought to light 2 weeks ago somewhat by Apple and what they plan to do, which on a consumer basis on their devices are pretty cool. If you're a kayak user, eventually there'll be hooks, I guess they're calling it, to automatically book your kayak travel, your airline tickets or whatever. Walk me through that and why that's so seminal and what that will enable RIAs to do in your vision.
Yeah, so we can already do a lot of this today. So we're at the absolute cutting edge of this. So Apple may be doing kayak, in a while. We could do that literally next week, right? But here's the vision. So Greg, imagine you're a financial advisor. You're sitting at your desk today, and you've got the swivel chair problem. You're over here using your CRM, and then you're using your portfolio risk tool, and then you're over on your custodian's website saying, "Hey, did that trade get done that last week?" And then you're on some other trading app or something like that. You probably got a dozen apps you need to use, and you're going back and forth between them, and they don't talk to each other, right? Frankly, so imagine a world, and this is not in 2029 or something like that. This is sometime later this year where you can not just type, but talk to your AI and say things like, hey, which clients have I not called this month that have more than $1 million of AUM? And it will tell you. And then you can say, I want to send an email to those clients to set up a meeting, and it will draft the email for you, right? Stuff like that, where it becomes command central for you, as opposed to what you have today, which is just going back and forth between, all these different apps. Another thing which a lot of RAs have asked us for and we've implemented is the ability to have a meeting, have the notes from that client meeting, let's say, automatically pulled into your, summarized and pulled into your system, and then create action items out of that, not just for you, but for your client. And then automatically draft the email to your client that says, hey, great chat. Here's a summary of the meeting. By the way, don't forget to do these 2 things, sign that form I sent you and check out this video we talked about. I mean, it's literally saving RAAs, half an hour for every meeting that normally they're typing in the notes and summarizing them and figuring out action items. It's just an incredible time saver that's going to allow financial advisors to spend more time with their clients, more time planning and thinking, and less time doing drudge work like, typing up notes.
Well, that's an exciting vision. And it's one that I don't think has been embraced yet in the financial world. I don't think people realize it's all siloed, right? Oh, this will help me write an email. This will help me analyze a spreadsheet, right? This will help me set up a spreadsheet. This will help me write the formula. I can go to Python using it, right? But I don't think anyone has articulated to me, like you just did, articulated the integration and how it'll really work as an assistant, right? Some people viewed it as having all these different kinds of assistant. So if you want to do, communications, it's one, analysis, it's another, annual planning, it's another. But that ability to just use the conversational AI, and to put it all together, I think is a powerful answer. How far off do you think this is? Where are you now?
Yeah,
where's the train now?
We're really, really close because we now have the ability to set up agents that can link into. We're literally trying to break it, right? We're like, okay, we've set it up with links to 40 APIs, right? It's still working, so it's pretty amazing. And I think that I would say, we're still testing a lot of this, but we're months away, not years away at this point. And, we're engaged with a whole bunch of, obviously, RIAs in our focus groups and other similar companies. And I think we're going to have some just incredible, proof of concepts coming out and some incredible news this summer.
Well, let's play a little game, if you would, indulge me, because you're in the thick of things and you have a great background in this. I'll ask you a question. You tell me how likely it is to happen on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being least likely, 5 being most likely. You ready? AI will be the ruination of our society. 1 to 5. 1 least, 5 most.
2.
We'll see more RIA jobs in the future than we do now because of artificial intelligence. You think we'll see less, 1, or more, 5?
I think it's more jobs, but not because of artificial intelligence. I'd call that a 4.
Do you think, okay, next one is, how much can be automated in the financial services sector? 1 being the least, 5 being the most. Let's say 5 would be an autonomous agent who is a super robo, right? As that which can do everything for you in the background and optimize all your personal finance.
I think we're at a 4 there, and I think the reason it's not higher is we don't have true cognitive AI yet, right? So we're not quite there on the cognitive part, but getting closer.
Okay, I'll give you a few names. Who do you think is going to be the big winner in this race? Will it be Google? Will it be Apple? Will it be OpenAI, or will it be Microsoft?
Well, obviously, Microsoft owns a good chunk of OpenAI. Look, what I'd say is I'll tell you my opinion about where those companies are today, and that is, OpenAI is roughly a year ahead of everybody else. So a year is a pretty good head start, but it doesn't guarantee that you win.
And what gives them that head start?
Well, I think they got there earlier, and they've also been working very hard to make sure that things like you could link it to APIs and databases and things like that through their tools. And again, like the other companies just haven't quite caught up there yet.
What are the gating factors that could cause another AI winner, do you think?
Well, I think look, if you look at the science behind large language models, the transformer, or really kind of the technical construction, was the thing that allowed it to win, right? That combined with giant computing power and giant amounts of data. But I made a prediction in one of my blog posts last month on our website, aicrisk.com, and that was 10 years from now, we're not even going to be using large language models. There's going to be something that's so much better. I don't know what it is yet. I'm not good enough to predict that, but something will be vastly better. So super cool, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of, I can never pronounce his name, the lead scientist at Facebook, and he's been talking about Sora and all the different models for video, and he just believes there's going to have to be a dramatically new kind of AI to actually pull that off. That right now, he believes it's right. It's kind of a parlor trick. We see these videos, and they look like movie trailers. They go for 3 seconds, and then there's another shot, and then there's another shot. And the reason is because there's too many alternatives for the machine to consider to create consistency of character, consistency of storytelling. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of AI actually emerges from that and where it goes. I think in generative, it's much more predictable. That's one thing I've learned, is that language is much more predictable than I ever imagined. But then I also learned that there's a lot more information in language than we ever thought. I mean, my crossroads here, Alec, has been storytelling, language, linguistics, all things I've been interested in all my life. And I just thought that a machine couldn't achieve intelligence, could not achieve intelligence on a single mode, right? A keyboard entering information that we learned through so many ways, visually, through sound, through socialization, through feel, through touch, through love, human interaction, right? But it seems, and it projects, that it does understand a lot of these things, at least in the context of how we use them. So it's been an amazing journey, amazing ride. My conversation with you is very interesting to me because you have a much deeper level of where this is going. And I think you're on a very, very smart track with regard to how these agents will transform the role of financial advisories and RIAs. Where it leads is, like I always say, maybe it'll create more free time, but maybe it'll create an opportunity for people to do those things that give their lives meaning in their workplace. I know in my firm, for instance, it's just increased the velocity of work we can do, high quality work. It hasn't reduced our retainers or our revenue streams, but now we can provide so much more than what we could only 2 years ago. It seems like an eternity. So instead of providing a news release, we provide a news release, we provide a video script, the content of a PowerPoint, a training agenda, a test for the training agenda. I mean, with no greater effort, really. I mean, once you have the storytelling right, you can disassemble or reassemble that in many ways. I mean, before this call, I'm on my phone with Chat GPT, dictating a vision statement, a mission statement for a proposal I have to do. It did a pretty good job. Ben was here with me. It did a pretty good job. I mean, I think it leverages human intelligence. It's not going to replace it, but it augments it, and it also provides a lot of different thought that you couldn't have had on your own. A lot of different creativity. We use it for three main things. We use it for content, brainstorming, and we use it for workflow, right? And what in my business, what no one's considered as workflow, what you're into is workflow. And that's where you really get productivity out of that. That's where you become, in my industry, we call it a super creator. That individual, that 28-year-old person that runs into my office and says, oh, I already finished the website copy and the news release, right? And the white paper, right? Because they had it done one version 3 ways. So it'll be an interesting tack to see where it goes. I'm going to follow you closely because I think of everyone I've spoken to in AI in wealth management, you're the one that is most profound to me and where you're taking this and how much you understand it. There's a lot of headway out there, and the combination of security compliance with these agents that can automate the process to deliver a better, higher quality product to their clients while giving great advice is the way to go. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. The transition from 30 years on Wall Street to running a software company was a big one, but fun. I can tell you that.
Well, it's interesting because I transitioned from 30 years of being a PR person to becoming a software developer in natural language, right? That's what we do. For us, that was the key. As soon as I saw it, I said, I can do software development now and not have to know the languages. I just have to be able to riff. I just talk to it like a human being and know where I want to get. And that was the breakthrough really for the productivity portion of our firm, is how we can help clients, for instance, do automated media training where a computer asks them and analyzes, right, along with us. And then we can really focus on achieving our clients' goals, which is often more visibility, more credibility. But a lot of that comes from the flow of content in one way or the other. And that's what's enabled us. So congratulations. I'm excited about your business. I plan to watch it closely grow. And I think you've got a lot of blue ocean in front of you, that's for sure.
Well, thanks, Greg. It's been great to be on the show.
Thank you. Take care.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.